What's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Seamus in the house. Today we've got an amazing guest. We connected just kind of like in this podcasting network. You know, Marcos and I are new in the podcast game, only been in a year. We don't know what we're doing. But what we're trying to do here is bring on people that can speak upon areas of life. As we learn it, you can learn it too. And today I've got Adam Adams on. And from what I've learned, he's a bit of a podcast kind of a host expert, but I'll let him speak upon that and we'll get right into the conversation. So Adam, would you mind introducing yourself for the audience and just kind of getting into what you're up to nowadays?
Sure. Adam Adams, real name. Got to always start there because everybody's like, I wonder what that's his alias for. Adam Adams, I've been doing real estate investments for a long time and have got a podcast agency and a virtual assistant placement agency. So those are the three things that I kind of have my hands in, unless you count a Turo business. I decided I bought too many cars, so I had to start renting them out. But a little bit about me, I started doing real estate investing while in college. My dad actually bought me a piece of property, then I had to pay for it because his accountant said that I had to. So I bought my first real estate investment while in college, and I made a bunch of money on it. And so whenever I graduated college, I decided not to use my degree. I just started doing real estate investments and launching businesses. And that became a big focus for I guess, my whole life. It's tough to even work for somebody else. So that's a little bit about me. I've got a couple of kids. I love mountain biking, snowboarding, jeeping, and playing with the kids.
Where are you located nowadays? I'm in Los Angeles, California. Where are you at?
Where in LA are you? Like what small part, if you will?
Glendale.
Cool. Pasadena? I used to live in Glendale, Pasadena.
Okay.
Compton, Carson, Bellflower, Bell Gardens, Harbor, Palos Verdes, West Hollywood. I was all around there.
So that's cool. Funny. I mean, I grew up. That's funny. I'm in Eagle Rock now with my fiance, but I grew up in. Do you know Chatsworth, Woodland Hills?
No. Woodland Hills does sound familiar, but I couldn't put it on a map. I only know the places that I lived in.
Okay, gotcha. You were everywhere then.
It's called a mission. So for 2 years, I was just serving a church and so I would be in one place for like 6 weeks, or maybe up to 4 months, and then move somewhere else.
What church were you?
I'm in Denver now. It was the LDS Mormon Church.
Okay, got you. You're in Denver now. I've been in Denver before. I had to cover one of our labs out there for what my normal job is for Synergenics. So you've been all over. How long you were there for? You were in LA for a few years, so you know a few spots here. That's pretty cool. And man, I feel like you've had a great. That's so cool that you've had such a great up and coming way of your professional life. Like not using your degree. What was your degree in, by the way?
Music education. I started composing music while in high school. Well, I guess technically junior high, but I started making money through it in high school. And I always believed that I would want to like bring music to other people. So I wanted to be a junior high band director. Mm-hmm. And then whenever I sold that first piece of property in 2007, I was about to graduate college but I made more on that one deal than I would have made in a whole year of my degree. So I switched.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know what a music director makes nowadays. But I mean, I was in music, and I mean, I know what like a educator makes, and if they're technically an educator, it's not necessarily something appealing when you're making that much money at that age. So that's cool. So you got into real estate. Real estate was the thing that you did. How did you get into kind of creating like businesses and getting where you're at now, talking about agencies that help podcast agencies that help certain people? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it's tough to answer that quickly, but I'll do my best.
Don't answer quick. Take your time. We got the time. Do whatever you want to
do. In college, I read. After selling that book, sorry, I'm back. Let me back up. After selling that piece of property, I finally read a book that my stepdad had been telling me to read for years. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So as somebody who's dyslexic and really is stressed out when reading, I always thought it was a good idea to read the book that he wanted me to read, but I never had the motivation to actually like sit down and do it. And then I sold that piece of property. Somebody called me because they knew that those properties were going to go really high in value. It was a cabin lot. And basically what they were doing is they were bringing electricity, gas, internet and stuff like that to the neighborhood. And so the properties were going to just skyrocket in value overnight.
Yeah.
And so somebody went in and tried buying as much of them as possible. So they made an offer to me, which was way more than I bought it for, but also way less than it was worth. So I took it. I took it fast, and that was my kind of like the beginning into, I guess my dad's right. Real estate really, there is something to it. So I grabbed that book that I had sitting on the shelf for years, and almost 10 years. And I finally opened it up and I read it, and I learned a little bit from Robert Kiyosaki, the author. He basically says that you need to have a business. He says there's these four quadrants: the E for employee quadrant, the I for investor quadrant, the S for self-employed quadrant, and the B for big business owner quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you want to do whatever you can to get into that B and the I quadrant, not the employee and not the self-employed. And so I thought to myself, how do I do that? So I ended up doing two things in 2007. The first of the two was I started managing property for a guy so that I could really understand how to manage my own rentals. And the second was I kept trying to figure out a business to start, like an actual business where I could have employees that would do all the work and I would do almost nothing. So while in college in 2007, my first business ended up kind of happening organically because the guy that I was managing all of his properties for him, he kept having me get bids for things. And I have a decent mind for being able to see things and know how to fix them. So I would bring somebody up and ask them to maybe look at the swamp coolers, for example. They're called evaporative coolers. Half the world doesn't know what these things are because half the world's in humid climates. You have to be in Denver, you have to be in Salt Lake, something like that. So I looked at these machines and they seemed pretty simple. And the bill was, I had 6 of them on one of these roofs. It was an 18-plex, an 18-unit apartment building. And so there were 6 of these on the top of the 3rd floor. And I got 3 bids, as the guy always told me to do. And all 3 bids started out like, it'll be like $100 or $200 to just look at the machine. And then these are the things that we might have to do. So I just asked the guys, like, well, what would you do? Like, what could be the problems? And they're like, well, here's this belt that needs to be done. You would change this floaty thing. And I'm like, well, how would you change that? They taught me. And so basically I went to the owner and I said, we've got bids anywhere from $1,200 just to look at it to $1,500. And if you want, I can probably do everything on my own. And I would charge you, and I gave him a price. Before this, I was making like, I think $12 an hour or something. Yeah. And then I gave him a price, and I ended up making about $100 an hour to do all 6 of these swamp coolers. And I said, okay, I can start doing that. So I figured I started a handyman company. I started hiring people that knew a lot more than me in flooring and paint and plumbing and electrical. And got up to 12 employees that were all full-time. Some of them were working 60 hours a week. And I was just doing bids. That's the only thing that I would do. And I was full-time in school. I was taking 18 credits. Wow. And whenever I had, after school and on weekends, I'd just be running bids and then putting my team to work. And so I was able to be netting 20 grand a month, pretty easily after paying all the business expenses. And that became my first business. And ever since then, I just kind of focused on having some type of business and putting as much as I can in real estate. We could go into any direction.
Though. I think this might be good for the view. How did you do? Because I've done 16 units. I think I might have done 17 units once. How did you do a full-time school load in music, right? And at the same time, then spend like hours doing, bids and then having a team of 12. I think like the how did you do that? If you can get into that, I know the audience would be like, how did
Yeah.
he? Because I remember being in college. Well, I wrestled in college, but like being in college and then doing a sport was already hard for me, and I was working. I was doing internships, but for me, I don't know the capacity because like if I went to work, I was training people. Hey, it's clock in, clock out. You get a few sessions or whatever. To run a business, your mind has to be like thinking further, than like
Yeah.
this week. So how did you do that?
Well, I'll say for me in music came naturally to me.
Mm,
So I have, I've never actually said this out loud, but my capacity for music is pretty high. It comes
mm,
with just like a fairly high IQ and just a desire and enjoyment of music. So I was taking 18 credits, but only like one class was hard, and it was like music history.
yeah.
Music history was tough. When I took accounting, that was a tough class. But most of my classes at the end of almost graduating, it was like band. So I just had to play music. I had to sing music. I had to play in the orchestra.
Uh,
I played in the jazz ensemble. Just different instruments in every different type of thing. But I knew those instruments really well. And so it was fairly easy for the most part. Then there was music theory where we would just write music. And I had been
yeah,
writing music since like I was a kid. So
yeah,
that was never a big deal to me. So I was fairly good except for music history, which was boring as hell. And, I didn't want to memorize all these random things about stuff that I wanted to figure out things now. But anyway, so the course load was kind of easy. Um, Managing the properties, I was basically an employee, and I would do basically what the owner would tell me to do. So I wasn't like I wasn't like a company of a property management company. I was basically told what to do, and I would just inform him, and he would make the decisions. I would do that. So that
yeah,
was easy enough. Running the business was tough. I would say I spent a lot of hours doing it, and there could have been a better way to do it. Like I could have hired a manager for the company, and then I wouldn't have had to even manage. But I didn't think that far. I didn't know that far. I guess my brain wasn't that big at the time. So I focused a lot on just giving bids, and sometimes my my employees would give the bids. So if the bid was 100% tile, and I would just get my tile guy to go out. If it was
yeah,
100% drywall, I'd just get my drywall guy, or flooring or whatever. Um, and then for other things that were multi, then like different jobs that I would go and I would make sketches, and then I would give it to my team, ask them, what should we charge for this? They would let me know. I'd give the final bid. Um, but they would do all the work. So they were working 40 to 60 hours each per week. And for me, I was probably working 15 to 20 hours a week on that in
yeah,
that business. So
yeah,
most of the stuff was done for me. A lot of the times you give a bid for construction, and it takes like 2-3 weeks to complete that job.
yeah,
So like I would just do the upfront 3 or 4 hours, and then I would have a team of 5 people sitting there for 3 weeks doing everything with
gotcha.
drywall and paint or whatever.
And then you do the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, that man, that's that's a pretty cool story. I mean, like, if for any college people out there listening, I think like that's freaking awesome that you did that because I think that can inspire someone to be like, yeah, I'm getting this degree, but I can learn this business, I can learn this construction, I can learn this bid thing. Because that would be, I mean, that's an exceptional skill. You're getting guys to work. You're getting people to work. You're feeding the family. You're helping people with their homes. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal stuff. Talk to me about your agencies though. How did you fall into that? So you're doing the construction, but now you've had this real estate thing too, and then you want to get into the business, the B sector of what Robert Kiyosaki's talking about, the agencies. How did that come about?
Yeah. Good question. I started the podcast agency in 2019. And back then I was syndicating deals. Syndicating apartment buildings would mean that I would have a team that would run all of the work after we close. My job would be to raise the money. So you'd raise, let's just say it's a $11 million project. You would need to raise something like $4 million, and then the rest would be a bank loan. So my job would just be to raise that equity, to go out and talk to the people. And then my team would do all of the managing of all of the pieces. We would hire attorneys, we would hire a property management company, and then we would do all the asset management. So as I was doing this in 2019, most people listening probably are aware that in 2017, we believed that there would be a crash. And in 2017, it was like, this is going to happen within a year or two. And in 2018, we said the same thing. In 19, we said the exact same thing. In 20, we said the exact same thing. 21, 22, and 23, we keep saying the exact same thing. We're going to have a crash in the next 2 years. 2024, which is, it's basically 24 as we're
as we're speaking, yeah.
But yeah, it's like every single year people think something's going to happen. In 2019, I finally felt it. I said, hey, I'm out. I don't want to close on a deal right now because within the next 6 years, there's probably going to be a crash. And most of the time our holding period is like 6 years. So I decided to figure out what else to do. I was in a business mastermind group. And in that mastermind, I just asked everybody, like, hey, I think there's going to be a crash coming in the next few years. And, I'm making most of my money in real estate investing. And so I'm thinking like I'm going to have to figure out something else to do. And because I don't want to be caught with my pants down. I don't want to be caught. So anyway, what I end up doing is I just asked them, what do you think I should do? Should I start a business? What do you think? And everybody's like, well, you've helped us with our podcast. At the time I had already done over 600 episodes. Now I'm at 1,200 episodes.
Holy cow.
At the time, 600 episodes behind me. And I had poured into, just for free, as friends, a lot of the people that were in that group. And they ended up ranking their podcasts in the top 1% of all podcasts worldwide. And they ended up making more money. They ended up getting more business coming in because of it. They ended up growing podcasts that were just hard. It's hard to do that. They're top 1% in the world. So only a few people can do that. And so they just said, you should do that. That's what you should focus on. You seem passionate about it. You are really, really good at it. You've helped a lot of us in this room, and we would have paid you. And I think you should do that. So in 2019, in July is when I founded Grow Your Show. It's my agency. And I called up my first person that he was my ideal client. So this is a good takeaway for your listener. If you're starting a business, or if you're starting a podcast, or if you're starting a foundation, you're going to have a perfect avatar. A perfect avatar is going to be that client you want to work with, or the listener for your show. And I had my avatar for my business, and his name is Corey Peterson. I knew him. He's a real person. I know where he lives. I know what his business is. I know everything about him. And I start thinking about, okay, that's the person that I want to serve. So I actually called up Corey. I said, hey, do you want to transfer over your stuff to me? I'm starting to do this. And he goes, sure, we'll do that. And then I made a few more phone calls. Just to people that were, in that perfect client realm. Said, hey, my team can do this for you. And as we started to grow, I had to get I already had one employee because she was editing my podcast at the time. And so I figured, hey, you have capacity to edit a few more people's podcasts. So I got my first few people. And then I hired another person for her to train. And then we started getting a little bit bigger. And my role became marketing and advertising for my company. So I became the person who would get out in front of the people. And I did it in a few ways. One is my podcast is called The Podcast on Podcasting. And so the show itself serves podcast hosts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I figured I would start interviewing more podcast hosts to just develop that relationship between each other.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the next step. And I end up getting up to about 6 employees, and we were serving about 10 podcasts. And now we are at 37 employees,
Wow.
and we're serving about just under 60 podcasts. Um, and so it just kind of, I guess the best way to say it is that it organically grew because I stopped wearing all of the hats. I decided to
Mm.
only wear the marketing hat and the coaching hat, and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything else was done by 37 other people. And that allowed me to be able to work less hours. So I work between 4 hours to maybe up to 20 hours in a week.
Wow.
And the team, they're all full time, 37 people working 40 hours, maybe 45 hours a week. And it is hard because when you're starting to decide that you're going to offload these responsibilities, it can be tough because one concern that comes to my mind is, how am I going to pay for that? Like, where's that money going to come from, though?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
soon as you kind of take a leap of faith and actually hire that person, you end up being able to have the capacity to make a lot more money. And so it's like, it's kind of stupid not to make that jump,
Yeah.
because when you don't make that jump, you're kind of stuck working harder and making less. But as soon as you
Yeah.
make that jump to start paying somebody to take a role off of you, a hat off of you,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
now you're going to allow the company to be able to be stronger and bigger. And I think for most of us, for the entrepreneurial type who should be a good CEO, we need free space in our mind. Like a computer might need a lot of gigs of RAM. We
Yeah.
need free space in our mind, which
Yeah.
to me means like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that is so profound and so true. Um, the entrepreneurial type. I mean, I know I'm that. I love the metaphor, and I'm gonna let you finish. But like the metaphor of like entrepreneurs are like like a race boat that have like 10,000 horsepower, but sometimes they get their rudder turned and they just do 10,000 horsepower in circles. And they have all this ambition, but they don't have like the focus, because I think sometimes, and I'm at fault of this, is like we do too much. We think that doing more is somehow supposed to lead to more success. But the empty space, Adam, I'm be honest with you, I feel like I've been chasing that more. Like it's kind of like the holiday season right now that we're recording this, and today's actually a vacation day for myself for my clinical work, and I'm like, I'm doing nothing. I'm literally sitting here just looking at views. I'm not trying to be on my phone. I'm not trying to watch. I'm not trying to catch up on my Netflix shows or binge or nothing. No podcast, no nothing. I'm literally taking the vacation day to have a vacation, literally from everything. And I feel like that empty space, it's so funny you bring it up. I feel like it's healing or kind of just helps or something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know more. You've been
Yeah.
doing this for a while. But yeah, talk about that empty space a little bit more. Go ahead and continue your thought.
Well, I truly have noticed that for me and for some other entrepreneurs, when we try to do less things, we are able to think. We're able to process. We're able to decide. We're able to plan.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're stuck, for example, if we're a dentist, if we're a doctor, if we're an attorney, and we have our own like private practice, and so we are the billing department, we are the actual attorney itself or the doctor itself. When we're the one doing the work, we never have time to plan. We never have time to grow. We never have time to decide. We're just working. We're just checking tasks off. We're making good
Yeah.
money, especially if you're a doctor, an engineer, an attorney. You make great money. You're making a couple $100 an hour, a few $100 an hour, but you can't make incredible money when you're the one, when it's limited to just you. So the
Okay.
two things on both sides is, you have other employees. You've got employees that you might be paying $100,000 a year, let's just say 100,000 for this person. they should easily be making the company more than 300,000. So if you've got, let's just say 5 employees you're all paying 100 grand, that should mean that you're making, you're netting $1 million from these 5 people. Not only that, but you are also able to free up your own time and space to be a better dad, be a better mom, be a better husband, be a better wife, be a better friend, be a better parent, whatever. You're also able to free yourself up to that. You free your time to be able to do more about eating right and going to the gym right, because you now have that capacity. And all of these things kind of are an upward spiral, if you will.
Yeah.
As you're starting to make small different choices. And like we were talking about with the gigs of RAM, now that your brain isn't inside of the thing always busy, you have that creativity, you have that open-mindedness, you have that peace, and it allows you to plan it allows you to plan big steps, like we should go into another market, or we should add this one thing, or if I hire this person, then we would be able to be making another $1 million a year. And it takes you from most people from beating their head against the wall to make 40, 60, or 100 grand a year. It takes them to be able to make 100, 200, 300, 500, 600, or even $1 million a year net. I do have one client that I'm super impressed with. His podcast, he wanted to have a podcast because he knew that it could allow him to make more money. His podcast makes him a little over 300 grand a month. So what he does is in a month's time, he invites people. So he has not even a huge listener base, but he invites his listener to go to an event. And based on the amount of people that come to the event, it's only like 40 people a month that come to the events, but he's able to sell 2 people per each month that he hosts this. It's not an in-person event, it's an online event. So he doesn't have to go anywhere. But he's pulling in slightly more than 2 clients a month from his podcast. He charges 150 grand each. So he's making $4 million extra dollars a year just by adding a podcast. Now, if for him, imagine if he was the one stuck doing all the work all the time, he never could have decided to do a podcast. He never would have had time to record a couple of episodes a week. And now he's able to make an extra 4 million. And that was kind of like the streamlined, easy way, but he had to get out of the nitty gritty first.
Yeah, that's such a great. I want to continue on that, because the question here is, so, and I'm just going to use Marcos and I as just the kind of the example, and maybe you're kind of quote unquote coaching us and educating us at the same time. So I do appreciate it. Marcos and I, we both have our 9 to 5. We're working in the clinical world. We wanted to do a podcast because it was just kind of a hobby thing, but we decided to create an offer about a year later. And that offer is more of a service-based business, and we do more performance health nutrition coaching. So with that being said, is that the way that people make money with the podcast? Is the podcast making money because you're getting clients? Because that's how I know. Or is the podcast making money because there's viewership, sponsorship, deals in the background that an audience can get? Or, hey, here's a product. Can you showcase our product? Like, you're sponsored by them. How are podcasts like that making that much? And to follow up, I know it's a long-winded question. What is someone doing to sell something for 150K? Is that some kind of next level consulting? Like, what is that, by the way?
Yeah. So to answer, my client's name, I think, is the name of your co-host, Marco. Marko, I think, is for my guy.
Marcos is Marcos, but Marco, Marco.
Okay. This one's Marco Ko. And Marco, what is he doing? So he has a real estate investing. He helps people invest in real estate. Mainly, he helps them learn how to buy large deals for 30 to 70% off. So he teaches you how to send letters to people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When something good happens, if you listen to him and do it, when you make one deal, you're probably going to net a few million, like right in the beginning. So let's just say you buy a 100-room hotel. On a 100-room hotel, let's pretend that this is worth about $6 million. But you're buying it at, let's just say, half off. So you buy it for $3 million. So the day that you purchase this hotel, you've just made $3 million, and it only cost you $150,000 to hire him. So that's just part of it. It's the value that his client can get is in big numbers. So he's also working with people that have a ton of money. He's only getting in front of people that have
That's his avatar.
And the thing that he does that's different from a lot of people, because I know a lot of people that charge 40 to 60,000 for a similar thing. Marco is charging 150. And how is he doing that? When he charges 150 grand to somebody, it's you pay me now, and I'm going to work for you until that happens. So it's like, if you're doing 50 grand or 60 grand or something, it's going to be, hey, this is for the first year. And if you want to do it again, it's another 50 grand. If you want to do another time, it's another 50 grand. So he says to his client, like, I'm going to work with you until you close that first deal. Once you close that first deal, and you make all that money, then you're good. I know you're good. You've made millions of dollars already. So that's kind of how he pitches it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a no-brainer. Like some consulting's tough. Like, you're going to teach me to do this one thing. Like, let's just call it a meditation one for now. Because I've got a buddy who he's about to charge me $1,800 to do breath work, because he's a Wim Hof breathing instructor. Wim Hof is some breathing guy.
Who's your buddy, by the way? Who's your buddy, by the way?
His name is Marcus Bradley. He's an ex-football player. He's an ex-football player. He currently lives in Tulum.
Know each other. Okay.
So this guy lives in Tulum. I was thinking about visiting him this week. I might still end up flying out to Tulum to just say hi to him. But he wants to charge me $1,800 to breathe better. The breathing doesn't have like a physical value attached to it.
Yeah, there's no like.
So it's kind of tough. I'm gonna pay him $1,800 for 3 months.
Yeah.
To learn how to breathe. It makes almost no sense. But if you say, hey, I'm going to invest $150K with this guy so that I can make $3 million more a year, it makes it like obvious. You know, it's too easy to say yes to something like that.
You can't say no to, yeah.
So let's go back to your question. Service-based business, deals in the background. How does this work?
Yeah, how does this work for like
in the first?
Yeah.
I'll say in the first that there's 8 ways to monetize a podcast. I'm going to talk about the 3 most common ways, starting with number 3, which is the worst. Number 3 is something called CPM, cost per meal. CPM means how much money you will get per 1,000 downloads you have per episode. So let's just say you're an average podcast. You have slightly less than 100 downloads per episode. The most common podcast out there has about a little under 100. So with that, if you're getting $20 CPM, cost per meal, cost per 1,000, if you're getting 20 CPM and you have 100, then you'll make $2 every time you have an episode. So this is why it's the worst way. I have had clients. Chris is a client who went the CPM model. It's called dynamic ad insertion. Dynamic ad insertion is where you record your podcast, and the company just is able to add ads before the podcast ever happens. So what he did is he had 3 ads in the beginning of his. The biggest problem that I didn't like when I listened to his show is that the first ad was in another language. So his podcast is in English, but everybody who is listening, we'll just call it 95% of them, only know English. And then you've got this random language that comes up, and you're just like, what is this even saying? Am I listening to the right show? Like, what's the problem here? With that in mind, he ended up having 3 ads. The first one was about 30 seconds long, and I think it was in Spanish. The second one was about some random thing that his listener, his avatar, like we discussed before, his avatar, it doesn't matter to them. The third one was another thing that the avatar definitely wouldn't care about. And so you sit there for 30 seconds, 1 minute, and then another minute. That's 2.5 minutes of no value. And that happens before you ever listen to the podcast. And he was stuck with it because he was making about $5 an episode. And he was like, oh, it's nice to make this little bit. And I said, you have way fewer listeners because you're doing this. Your listener comes and they don't even know if they're listening to the right thing. So they turn it off.
They turn it off right before,
or they listen through all of them and they hate it and they think that you're a sellout and they decide they're going to find somebody else that doesn't do that. So the CPM model in all cases is crappy because you don't make very much money in it. You're not serving your listener with it. Yeah. And you're probably annoying your listener and you have no control over the ads, what language they're in or what it's about. It could be about lingerie and you could be like some religious podcast, right? Like it could be anything that completely doesn't serve your person. Now the second way, so we went from 3, the bottom, to 2, which is where you reach out to the person that you believe in, that has a product that does serve your listener, where you command the price. Instead of making $2 an episode, you could make $1,000 an episode. You reach out to them and you say, hey, I need somebody that does this thing. I thought of you first because I use you, because I work with you, because I trust you, because I believe in you. And I left a spot open just for your type of product. And like I said, I'd like to offer it to you first, but if you can't do it, it's no big deal. I can reach out to another company and give them the opportunity. And you usually get them in, and they're going to spend. Alex is one of my clients. Alex wasn't ever monetizing his podcast at all. And he went into option number 2 first. Later, he goes into option number 1, I'll tell you about. But Alex says, I'll go to option number 2. And he reached out to 2 people. He and I had a couple of calls. How do I figure this out? How much do I charge? How do I reach out to them? How do I sell them? He made 2 calls to 2 people, sold them both, and he was making 10 grand a month for his podcast. Wow. A lot of people would say that's great money. With Alex, he felt like he wasn't serving his listener enough. He felt like not all of his listeners were hiring those people. He felt like it was wasting time for the listener. And so he after doing that for a year, making a $9,500, I think it was per month. After doing that, then he reached out to me and said, I think I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to monetize the way you monetize. How do I monetize? And it's the way that you mentioned before. You mentioned service-based businesses that you and your partner have. Yeah. This could be online coaching calls, consulting, a product or a service, really. And you're offering it to your listener. I almost said you're selling it to your listener, but I don't feel that way. I think you're offering it to your listener because it helps them get to their next level. Yeah, yeah. So that's what he ended up doing. And now he has a mastermind group and he makes about $45,000 a month through his podcast by getting new members to his mastermind group. And so he was making about $9,500. And then he made this one switch and now he's making $45,000. So he's like 5x'd his amount of money per month. Yeah. And he doesn't have to have these ads that are about these other products either. So those are the 3 top ways. Again, there's 8 ways to monetize, but these are the 3 most common ways. CPM model, selling, reaching out to your own partner of the show or a sponsor of the show. And then the top way, number 1, would be selling your own product or service. Yeah. And I will give like a tiny bit to that. If that's what you're doing, don't be afraid of it. Talk about it all the time. Talk about it on every episode. Yeah. And think about it in terms of how does this help my listener get to the next level? So for me, I sell podcast services. Like I help podcasters offload all the hard work. We do all the marketing to grow their audience, that kind of stuff. Yeah. When I'm on my podcast, I don't say, you need to hire me, blah, 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 blah. I'll say different things like, here's the how to. Like here's all the things you need to do to monetize your show, for example.
Yeah.
And then I'll say if you need help monetizing your show, if you want to call me, feel free. My link, my schedule link is down in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to help you.
Yeah.
And then you're on the phone, you give them all the value that you can, and you let them know, like, I can also take off all of this stuff. If you don't want to do it, we can handle it. You want me to show you the pricing? They say, yeah. You show them what the pricing is, that you would handle everything. And then they're like, ooh, that sounds compelling because it actually would have cost me all this extra time and money. I'd rather have you do it because you know what you're doing. You have results for your other clients. Let me hire you. And that's kind of like the natural way, the progression, I suppose, to being able to serve people that way. And you mentioned deals in the background. What did you mean by that?
Like sponsorships. That's what you said. The thing that you said.
Okay,
like this
sponsorship.
sponsorship,
Perfect.
like the deals that they're making in the back end or anything like that, or all that. But
Perfect.
that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, we've only been doing this for a year, and we have just finally figured out what we wanted to do. And I think what you just said there makes a lot of sense because we're organic. Paying someone is kind of off the table right now. I mean, we've had people talk to us like, hey, do this, do that, and we could work together. We even thought of like doing a course, and all these things, but we've been kind of like taking our foot back a little bit just because of the holidays and just kind of like ramping up for the new year, what we really want to think about. And that whole organic way of what you just said, kind of like number one, just giving them what you're doing. You're just kind of showing them the offer, but you're not necessarily making like a hard thing about it. Like buy from me. I like that a lot because Marcos and I are very much that we're kind of like, you know, how do I say this? Agnostic towards about like you work with us, like with your health, that's cool. If you want to work with someone else, that's totally cool too. I'm just here to kind of give education, nuance, and feedback of the way we've experienced things in our clinical day to day, how we've worked with people over the last 10 years, combined 20 plus years of experience together. This is how we get results. This is how other people get results. These are like the laws of it all. But this is the people that we work with. If you feel like you resonate with that, awesome. And I like that way a little bit more. I appreciate that because I don't feel like I'm being suffocated into take my dollar out and, you know, give it to you. I like the approach of like, hey, look, we got this option. You work with us. If not, not a big deal. Right.
Yeah. And you got to understand that maybe 1 out of 1,000, or if you're amazing, maybe possibly 1 out of 100 people that listen are going to join your service. So you got those other 99% or 99.9% of people that are following you, telling other people about you. You don't want to turn them off. You want to support them. You want to help them. And hey, if they don't need you and they can still get that result, awesome. That good for them. And there's going to be, you know, 1 of 100, 1 of 1,000 that need you. They can afford you. They want to work with you. It would benefit them. And those are the ones that you end up working with in a capacity where they might pay you 150 grand or whatever the amount is, you know.
I want to continue on this path right here, not including the monetization. I know people worry about money, you know, whatever this recession thing is or whatever this environment is, but let's just say money not granted in there. Just kind of thought, how does someone deliver a compelling show? These 37 shows you've seen, what are some of the best, I would say, tools of the trade, kind of the mindset that they've done? How are they best serving the audience, the people that they're creating a show for, that it makes people come back salivating week after week, day by day, episode by episode? Yeah, what are some of the things that you've seen? Maybe like a top.
Yeah, I'll say the very first thing, the most important thing, if you are going to add value and hopefully make it in to support a business, you'll miss the boat if you don't have an avatar in mind.
Okay.
Having an avatar means understanding your perfect listener, the person that you can work with and who would hire you.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand them, you're going to get a lot of benefit. But you got to remember, you got to understand them in 3 different ways. And that is this. You have to understand their geographics. Where are they? Are they in this country or that country? Their demographics. Do they have kids? How much money do they make? Etc. How old are they? Demographics. Then psychographics. What are they worried about? What do they want to happen? What keeps them up at night? What's holding them back? Go through all of that. And when you understand that person fully, it's going to allow you to offer really good information for that person. A lot of people miss the boat. I did with my avatar. I understood that I wanted to raise capital, raise millions of dollars so that we close on giant deals, millions of dollars worth. And so I knew the person, but I missed the boat when it came to actually creating content for that person. So basically, for example, I wanted a high net worth individual who makes way more money than they need, and they want to be able to have enough money to put into investments.
Yeah.
And I called my podcast Creative Real Estate. Creative real estate speaks to the poor person, speaks to the person that needs creativity in order to just do real estate. So I was teaching the wrong thing. I called it the wrong thing to attract the person that I wanted. So once you understand the avatar, you've got to figure out what your unique proposition is, USP, unique selling point. What do you do that's different from everybody else in that field? If you want a compelling show, speak to your avatar and be unique. So for example, for me, I have a podcast show. Today, there are dozens and dozens of podcast shows. Dozens. And how do I draw my line in the sand? When I say line in the sand, it says all of those people do it this way. I do it this way because I do it differently because. So once you figure out your avatar, you figure out what's your USP, and you then exploit it. So for example, on my show, I teach people how to have a top show. I don't just teach them how to have a show. So the way I draw my line in the sand is there's a whole bunch of places, there's a whole bunch of people that can teach you how to buy a mic, how to use a mic, how to push record. That's great. That's awesome. I don't want you to be the only person listening to your show. That's why on this show, we teach you how to grow your audience, how to serve your audience, how to have a better experience with them, and how to sell them, because I want you to do two things that none of those other guys can do. I want you to make an impact on other people, and I want you to make an income with your podcast.
Yeah.
An income and impact, those are the two things you really want. Everybody else is just teaching you how to have a show. You might get lucky, you might not. But if you listen to this show, it's different, because we're going to teach you how to have a top show that actually gets results. So that's my line in the sand. So the first thing, avatar. The second thing, draw your line in the sand. Basically, what's your USP?
Yeah.
The third part is how to format the show. When I say format the show, we need to have something called hook, story, offer. Don't worry, this works if you are trying to have an advertisement for your business. This works if you're just trying to make a social media post. Hook, story, offer is the strategy to kind of make sure that people are going to see you, follow you, listen to you, read your post, whatever. So that format is something that I think a lot of people miss. They come on and they kind of just shoot the breeze. They kind of just ask a few questions, but they haven't really told their listener the hook. So in the beginning, we could say to our listener, we would call them out with the hook. We might say, if you're this person going through this and wanting to achieve that, you're in luck. You're going to get that on today's episode. So that's the hook. Or the hook could be, did you know that 97% of successful businesses do paid advertising? Don't you think that adding fuel to the tank to get your vehicle, your podcast to success, adding advertising dollars, don't you think that would fit into that 97%? You should be putting money into your show. That could be the hook. Then the story is, you're going to learn this thing, or you teach them the thing. And then the offer is the call to action at the end. So you basically wrap it up. This is what you learned. And if you want me to do it, let me know. I can help. So hook, story, offer. You start with a question or something that's going to grab attention. What is it? What is it when someone gives you the percentages? The data?
The stats?
The stats. That's what I needed. I needed the word stats. So you give them a stat. or you propose a question and then you give them the story and then you call them to action. If you're doing that, then you're going to grab attention. They're going to learn what they need, and they're going to call you at the end. So those things are, if there's a fourth thing, then it would just be consistency, which means that you publish at the same time of the week every single week. So if you're doing 5 episodes, they all come out Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. or whatever you've chosen, and you never falter.
Never falter.
That's also very, very important.
I love that. That's freaking phenomenal. Well, look, I want to be respectful of your time, Adam. I think you kind of like landed on some gems there, and I know, man, I'm gonna have to kind of bring this back to Marcos and the team, because I'm like, how do we, my thing is like, how do we get out of the rat race, so to say? Because just a few things. I know we've only known each other for like an hour now, but like, how does someone create their own economy when maybe like your position or your life is kind of falling into shambles? How do you have those skills? How do you do those things? And that's on top of mind for Marcos and us right now, just due to some things happening in the background, and other things. So we want to be able to be like, okay, cool. And we want to share that too to our audience, because our audience is very much like, look, we're learning it as we go. But Adam, any last key takeaways, maybe just of your personal stuff, who you are, like personal kind of like mantras of what you do, what you're into, just a little bit about you, and we can kind of just end it there. None of those big gems to make money, but just kind of like the who you are as a person, Adam.
I got one thing that I learned in junior high band. Mr. Brimhall would have us memorize sayings. There's this saying that came from Calvin Coolidge that has resonated with me and really been life-changing. And I won't share the entire thing, but Calvin Coolidge basically says that persistence and determination are the most important things. In that quote, he says, if you're talented, it's worth nothing. He said, if you're smart, it's worth nothing. If you're educated, it's worth nothing. You can have all of these benefits, and they won't make a big difference. He says, in the end, it's your persistence and your determination. And going through my life, I've seen people that have tried to start a business. I've seen people try to start doing real estate investing in one way or another. I've seen people try to start a podcast as well. Mm-hmm. And what happens when a lot of people start something is they plan to dabble it. They dabble in it. They test it out. They're just putting their foot in the water. So when that becomes you, if your listener becomes the person who just tries something for a couple of months and realizes, I have to air quote realizes that it doesn't work after 2 months, they have shot themselves in the foot, because you don't get the value just by dabbling in something. You start to learn and grow and become wealthy after putting a lot of time, money, and effort into something. So persistence and determination, I've got it tattooed on me, on my back, by the way, equal endless potential, because it doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, where you're from, your nationality, your ethnicity, your culture. What matters is that you're willing to start something and stick with it until you get that success. Yeah. If that's your podcast, think of your podcast as like a minimum of 3 years. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all out for 3 years. If that's real estate investing, I'm going to do this for this amount of time. Yeah. And if you're able to stick with it and never quit, 100% chance you will be successful. Yeah. Just because you're persistent and determined.
Oh man, persistence and determination. I really appreciate that, and that does resonate. I think in this day and age, it's very easy to kind of scroll through social media and some person goes like, "Oh, this is how I did it in 3 months," and it's like BS. Like if you get quick rich, rich, quick, you're probably losing it quick as well. It's that persistence, that determination, and the long term, because the wealth, not even the financial wealth, the wealth comes from the stacking of time. I've been doing some form of training, nutrition, health, and stuff ever since I was like a teenager. Sports, wrestling, all this stuff. I have 20 plus years of knowledge that I can pull from, And that's a wealth of knowledge, because when I work with my patients, clients, and people that we work with, like they say something, I'm like, I already know what that is. Like, and I can give you the exact, whatever. Someone that dabbles in, like, let's just say fitness training, it's like, yeah, they might understand that, but like they wouldn't get it to the depth. The depth of knowledge is super, super important once you had years. So, well, Adam, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm actually kind of like opening my head to more questions, and I wish Marcos was here. Maybe gotta do a part two. I gotta talk to the team, and I honestly need to, quite honestly, dig deep into your stuff a little bit more, because what you said there about impact is very important for me. I do want to leave this world as a Christian, a man of faith myself. I do want to live this world better than I am going into it. And also at the same time, yeah, sure, make that economy, that income at the same time, just being honest, because we kind of need that as well. But Adam, where can the people find you? What are your socials, and if there's any things, any links or any products or services that you might be coming out with, we'd love to kind of share that as well.
If someone just wants to check out the podcast for free and learn a little bit more about podcasting, it's the podcast on podcasting. Pretty easy to find. They could put in Adam Adams or the show name. And if somebody's ready to work with us, hire us, want to check out the website, it's growyourshow.com. And any social media, I can give it to you. You can put it into the show notes. But there's a free way, the podcast on podcasting, a paid way, growyourshow.com.
Perfect. Well, you guys heard it there, and another episode of the Macro Perspective solo with just me, Coach Seamus. Guys, check out the links with Adam Adams, and we'll make it happen. Other than that, appreciate y'all. We'll see you soon.